Imagine a man so cunning, so charming, that he could slip through the fingers of law enforcement time and time again. A man whose life reads like a thriller novel, full of danger, deception, and deadly encounters. This is the story of Charles Sobhraj, famously nicknamed the Serpent. From jewel thefts to drug dealings, from elaborate cons to shocking murders, Sobhraj's life was a masterclass in manipulation. He targeted unsuspecting travelers, using charm and deceit to disarm his victims while keeping authorities perpetually a step behind. Born into a turbulent childhood and shaped by early trauma, Charles developed a charisma that masked a chilling ruthlessness. Behind the smiles and silver tongue lay a calculating mind, capable of planning crimes across countries with remarkable precision. Authorities were often outwitted, victims betrayed. And yet, Sobhraj seemed untouchable, bribing officials to secure comfort even behind prison walls. But this story is not just about crime, it is about the psychology of a man who could live among society while hiding a deadly agenda. It is about the intricate dance between law, luck, and deception, and how one individual can leave a trail of chaos while remaining a figure of fascination. In this video, we will explore the life, crimes, and escapes of Charles Sobhraj, uncovering the methods, motives, and mind of one of history's most notorious criminals. Stay with us as we unravel this real-life thriller, filled with suspense, shocking twists, and lessons on human behavior. If you find this story as fascinating as we do, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a journey into the dark yet captivating corners of history. Welcome to a story you won't forget. Charles Sobhraj's story becomes even more chilling when one examines the roots of his dark personality. From a young age, he faced a childhood marked by trauma and neglect, experiences that would leave deep psychological scars and shape the man he would become. Abandoned and mistreated by those who should have cared for him, he learned early that the world was a place where survival often meant manipulation, deception, and cunning. These formative years, combined with a serious brain injury sustained in his youth, forged in him a capacity for detachment from the suffering of others, a detachment that would later manifest as cold, calculated cruelty. While most children develop empathy and moral guidance from parental figures, Charles found no such compass, leaving him free to explore the boundaries of human behavior without restraint, guided only by his own desires. As he grew, this blend of early neglect and neurological disruption seemed to amplify tendencies that many would find terrifying. Where most saw human connection, he saw opportunity. Where others felt remorse, he felt strategy. And where society imposed rules and moral boundaries, he saw obstacles to be circumvented. His killings were not impulsive acts of rage, but methodical decisions aimed at personal and financial gain. Victims became more than tragic names, they were pieces in a game of survival and profit, each carefully selected, manipulated, and ultimately discarded once their utility had expired. This calculated approach to murder was evidence of a mind unburdened by conscience, a man who could navigate complex social situations with charm and wit while harboring intentions that were nothing short of lethal. Yet what makes his story so compelling is not just the crimes themselves, but the way he intertwined them with an almost theatrical manipulation of those around him. Authorities, fellow travelers, and even friends became unwitting actors in his schemes, responding to the charisma and confidence he exuded, often blind to the danger lurking beneath the surface. It is this duality, the ability to appear charming and harmless while orchestrating crimes across borders, that captures the imagination and evokes both horror and fascination. Even in the most extreme circumstances, Sobhraj demonstrated an uncanny ability to adapt, escape, and reinvent himself, a skill honed from years of navigating a world that had offered him little guidance. Compassion, or moral example. Charles Sobraj's life is a portrait of psychopathy in motion, a testament to how early experiences, neurological factors, and innate cunning converge to create an individual capable of extraordinary manipulation and destruction. Each encounter, each scheme, and each calculated act of violence reflects a mind that understood human behavior intimately, using that knowledge not to nurture or protect, but to exploit and dominate. This is a story that challenges our understanding of morality, justice, and the thin line between charm and menace, inviting us to peer into the mind of a man who turned his childhood wounds and personal brilliance into a path of infamy that would leave a permanent mark on those unfortunate enough to cross his path. By the time Charles Sobhraj had reached adulthood, his cunning and charm had matured into a lethal combination that he wielded across the bustling, colorful landscapes of Southeast Asia, turning the region into the stage for his carefully orchestrated crimes. Travelers, young and trusting, arrived in countries like Thailand, Nepal, India, and Malaysia seeking adventure, enlightenment, or a simple escape from the routines of home, unaware that a predator had already been waiting in the shadows. Sobhraj, ever the master manipulator, had an uncanny ability to sense vulnerability and curiosity in those he encountered, and he would draw them in with an almost magnetic charm, offering friendship, guidance, or a taste of excitement that seemed irresistible to those far from familiar surroundings. Once trust was established, he would begin the intricate dance of deception, introducing subtle manipulation, persuasive words, and carefully administered drugs that loosened inhibitions, clouded judgment, and ultimately rendered his victims compliant to his schemes. Money, passports, and valuables became the tools through which he asserted control, but these were never mere objectives. They were parts of a larger performance in which every action reinforced his dominance. The thefts themselves were executed with precision, often leaving little immediate evidence, but the consequences extended far beyond the material, leaving a web of confusion, fear, and unanswered questions in his wake. Those who crossed paths with Sobhraj often found themselves questioning reality, unsure whether the smiling companion who had guided them through a foreign city was friend or foe, as the truth of his intentions unfolded only when escape was impossible. His crimes were not limited by borders, reflecting a mind that saw countries not as sovereign nations but as landscapes to be navigated, manipulated, and conquered with strategy and charm, leaving law enforcement agencies baffled and often powerless to anticipate his next move. What made Sobhraj particularly terrifying was not simply his capacity for violence, but his psychological mastery over his victims. He understood the patterns of trust, desire, and fear that drive human behavior, and he exploited them relentlessly, ensuring that even those who survived encounters with him carried the lingering impact of betrayal, confusion, and terror. Each city he entered became both playground and hunting ground, a place where his ability to blend into society, maintain a facade of normalcy, and manipulate circumstances allowed him to operate with impunity, while the trail of stolen items might have drawn law enforcement's attention. It was the inconsistencies, the disappearances, and the inexplicable circumstances surrounding each incident that revealed the depth of his cunning, illustrating a criminal mind that did not merely act on impulse but calculated the ripple effects of every choice, every encounter, and every life. Sobhraj's story across Southeast Asia is as much a narrative of travel and culture as it is a chilling chronicle of predation, where the excitement of foreign landscapes and new experiences intersected with the dark, methodical manipulation of a man who saw the world as a canvas for his schemes. The cities, markets, temples, and hostels he moved through became unwitting accomplices, bearing silent witness to a pattern of charm, betrayal, and violence that would span multiple countries and confound authorities at every turn. The legacy of his actions extends far beyond stolen goods. It is a testament to the danger posed by intelligence and charisma untempered by empathy, a stark reminder that appearances can deceive, and that the lure of adventure can sometimes lead unsuspecting travelers into the carefully laid trap of a predator who understood human nature better than anyone could have imagined. Charles Sobhraj's life was not confined to the shadows of city streets or the back alleys of Southeast Asia. It extended into the very institutions meant to contain him, where his cunning and audacity transformed prison walls into arenas for manipulation and escape. In France, India, and Afghanistan, the harsh realities of incarceration could have broken a lesser man. Yet Sobhraj viewed confinement not as punishment but as another challenge to conquer, a test of his resourcefulness and understanding of human behavior. Behind the barred windows and locked doors, he studied the people around him, the guards, the administrators, the fellow inmates, with the same careful attention he had applied to unsuspecting travelers. Noting weaknesses, routines, and opportunities that could be exploited, his intellect and charm, honed through years of deceit and seduction, allowed him to cultivate relationships that others could not even imagine possible within the walls of a prison, convincing some to act as unwitting accomplices, while others became complicit through bribes, favors, or fear. Escapes became both a signature and a statement, each one executed with meticulous planning that revealed the depth of his understanding of human nature and systemic vulnerabilities. In India, where the heat and bureaucracy could overwhelm even the most disciplined officials, he maneuvered through corridors of authority, using gemstones and money to lubricate the wheels of corruption, ensuring that doors once thought securely locked swung open at precisely the right moment. Afghanistan presented a different set of challenges, where the political climate and local hierarchies complicated even the simplest acts. Yet Sobhraj adapted, blending patience with audacity, understanding that timing, persuasion, and the careful placement of incentives were just as powerful as any physical tool. Each escape did not merely represent freedom. It was a demonstration of his ability to impose his will on circumstances, turning obstacles into opportunities, and transforming spaces of confinement into stages for his ingenuity. While the outside world often marveled at reports of his exploits, it was within the claustrophobic confines of cells, courtyards, and prison offices that the full extent of his cunning was revealed. Smuggling gems became more than a pursuit of wealth, it was a method of negotiation, a currency of influence that allowed him to maintain a lifestyle of comfort and control even behind bars. Bribes were carefully calculated gestures, tailored to the desires and fears of specific individuals, ensuring compliance without immediate detection. The very conditions meant to suppress him, the rules, the routines, the surveillance became tools in his hands, manipulated with the skill of a chess master anticipating moves several steps ahead. Every interaction, every conversation, every gift favor served a purpose, reinforcing the notion that Sobhraj's power did not diminish with the loss of physical freedom, but rather intensified, as he demonstrated the capacity to bend circumstances to his advantage with a sophistication that confounded authorities and inspired awe in those who studied his methods. The story of Sobhraj's life in prison is thus inseparable from his larger narrative, reflecting a man whose intelligence, charm, and audacity allowed him to operate above and beyond conventional limitations, transforming danger into opportunity and confinement into a theater of manipulation. His repeated escapes were not merely acts of self-preservation but vivid illustrations of a mind that understood the interplay of human desire, fear, and ambition, exploiting it with precision and flair. In every country, behind every set of bars, Sobhraj left a legacy of astonishment and disbelief, proving that true mastery over circumstances comes not from brute force or obedience to rules but from the careful orchestration of influence, timing, and calculated risk, leaving a story of audacious survival that continues to fascinate and unsettle those who study the life of the Serpent. Charles Sobhraj's manipulative genius extended far beyond his own actions. He understood that true power often lay not only in personal skill but in the ability to inspire loyalty, fear, and dependency in others, creating a network that amplified his influence and reach. From the very beginning, he carefully selected those who would serve as extensions of his will, individuals whose talents, ambitions, or vulnerabilities could be molded to suit his purposes. Romantic partners were often the first to fall under his spell, drawn to his charisma, his apparent sophistication, and the aura of danger that surrounded him, yet unaware that their devotion would become a tool for his schemes. Young men and impressionable followers were similarly cultivated, encouraged to admire, emulate, and ultimately act on his instructions, forming a small but intensely loyal group that functioned almost like a personal entourage, blending elements of admiration, coercion, and dependence. This close-knit circle became the operational backbone of Sobhraj's criminal activities, enabling him to extend his reach across borders, evade detection, and manipulate victims with a precision that would have been impossible alone. Within this self-constructed microcosm, Sobhraj exercised both psychological insight and authoritarian control, weaving a complex web of obedience, fear, and incentive. Those who aligned with him were rewarded with status, financial gain, or the illusion of belonging to something exceptional, while subtle intimidation and demonstrations of his ruthlessness ensured that dissent was rare and often short-lived. Victims, on the other hand, were systematically isolated, disoriented, and entrapped, guided into vulnerability by the orchestrated behavior of Sobhraj and his associates, whose presence reinforced the perception of safety or inevitability, masking the danger that lurked beneath the charm. Each accomplice played a carefully defined role. Some provided logistical support, others facilitated introductions or distractions, and a few acted as enforcers when persuasion alone was insufficient. This division of labor, orchestrated with meticulous foresight, magnified Sobhraj's effectiveness, allowing him to manage multiple schemes simultaneously across countries while keeping the appearance of normalcy or legitimacy intact. What made this dynamic particularly chilling was not merely the presence of accomplices, but the psychological depth with which Sobhraj manipulated them, turning admiration and love into instruments of complicity. His partners were encouraged to see themselves as indispensable, as co-creators of a thrilling and exclusive lifestyle, all while remaining under the invisible but omnipresent influence of the Serpent. Even as authorities began to piece together his crimes, the structure of his network often allowed him to operate just ahead of detection, with loyal associates shielding him, misdirecting investigators, or unwittingly facilitating escapes, all without fully grasping the extent of his manipulation. The creation of this inner circle transformed Sobhraj's criminal activities from individual acts of theft and violence into a coordinated system of control and deception, in which each participant was both a tool and a participant, both enabler and observer. It was a delicate balance of psychological insight, strategic planning, and personal charm, a testament to Sobhraj's understanding of human behavior and social dynamics, and an extension of the same cunning that had allowed him to charm travelers, evade authorities, and escape confinement. By surrounding himself with accomplices, Sobhraj not only multiplied his capabilities but also crafted a microcosm in which loyalty, fear, and desire intersected to sustain his operations, creating a compelling and terrifying portrait of a man whose influence extended far beyond his own actions, leaving a legacy of manipulation that continues to fascinate and horrify. By the time Charles Sobhraj emerged from the shadows of prison, The world had already become fascinated by the man who had once eluded authorities across continents with uncanny skill and audacity. No longer a shadowy figure striking fear into unsuspecting travelers, he transformed into a public spectacle, a controversial celebrity whose notoriety seemed almost inseparable from the crimes that had defined his life. The media, ever hungry for sensational stories, portrayed him as both a charming enigma and a cunning villain, amplifying his myth while giving audiences an unprecedented glimpse into the mind of someone who had manipulated, deceived, and killed with chilling calculation. Interviews, documentaries, and film deals offered Sobhraj a stage to narrate his own story, turning his life into a commodity, a narrative that people were eager to consume, debate, and sensationalize. Despite the glamour that surrounded his post-incarceration persona, the shadow of his crimes never fully receded. Families of victims, authorities, and international observers continued to demand accountability, reminding the world that behind the charisma and media appearances lay a record of violence, exploitation, and loss. Diplomatic pressure, legal debates, and public outrage persisted, emphasizing the moral and social complexities of a man who had long blurred the line between criminality and celebrity. Sobhraj's life became a paradox. While he reveled in attention and material comfort, he was perpetually tethered to the consequences of his past, a reminder that no matter how persuasive or charming, actions carry weight, and history never forgets. In examining the trajectory of Charles Sobhraj, one cannot ignore the lessons that emerge from his story. It is a narrative about the dark potential of human cunning, the fragility of trust, and the power of manipulation. It highlights the intricate interplay between personality, circumstance, and choice, and challenges us to consider how society responds to notoriety, fame, and infamy. His life is at once a cautionary tale and a reflection on the fascination the world holds for those who operate outside the law yet capture the imagination through audacity, intelligence, and daring. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the extraordinary and chilling life of Charles Sobhraj. If you found this story compelling, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode of our historical and true crime explorations. Your support helps us bring more detailed stories, thoughtful analysis, and engaging narratives right to your screen, uncovering the people and events that have shaped our world in ways both fascinating and unsettling. Stay tuned for more incredible stories. And remember, history is full of lessons waiting to be discovered, sometimes from the most unexpected sources.